Right when I got my Huawei P40 Pro, my S20 Ultra got the third software update. So I thought let me try to compare the cameras between these two, and for good measure I've thrown in Pixel 4 XL to understand how they differentiate with each other. So I've tested all kind of scenarios, the day shots, the night shots, the video, the audio, everything. Let's try to understand which of these cameras is perfect for you. Let's check it out. S20 Ultra can record in 8K resolution, but in this resolution it cannot surpass 24 frames per second. And this resolution on Ultra also crops the footage. On the other hand, P40 Pro uses its ultra-wide cine lens to capture video and can go as high as 4K 60 FPS. Pixel uses its 12 megapixel sensor and can record maximum 4K 30 FPS. Let us try to look at the 4K recording on all these three cameras. Right off the bat, in 4K 60 FPS scenario, you would notice that Samsung's S20 Ultra records very sharp and crispy videos from its main sensor and has a bit of warm tone to the video footage. Now keep this in mind that Ultra did not have this quality when it was released, and it has taken them 3 different updates to get here. Although when you look at HDR scenes, you would notice that how Samsung handles the background so well, but sacrifices equally bad in terms of shadows in the foreground. And when you talk about the color tones, Samsung has its own way of showing these colors, their signature saturated tones, but here they're sort of mixed with a little bit of warmer tones. P40 Pro is perfect in terms of color balance, and Pixel is showing absolutely natural footage the way my eyes could see in that scene. Now let us try to get into the 1080p scenes. We've done 4K, we've seen 8K, now let's get into the 1080p scenes and understand how these footages look different in the 1080p scenario. Overall, I actually cannot see a lot of difference in 1080p scenarios. All these three cameras are recording very similar footage, whether it's colors or whether it's highlights, whether it's shadows. But the moment when you push into the HDR scenarios, you would see how P40 Pro shines way ahead than Pixel and S20 Ultra. For most of the things, I like what I see here, and I would rather let you be the judge of what you see. What kind of colors do you prefer? It actually comes down to that sort of preference in almost all these camera tests. Overall, all these three cameras are recording pretty good footage, and you would be happy with either of these. So this is the selfie camera sample from all these three cameras. Samsung's S20 Ultra and Huawei's P40 Pro can go up to 4K 60 FPS, whereas Pixel doesn't do that. So this is the 4K 60 FPS sample from the front-facing cameras. Now let's try to switch them and bring them equally down to 1080p. So now we are with 1080p on all these three cameras, all of them recording at the exact same resolution. However, Samsung's S20 Ultra and Huawei's P40 Pro are recording at 60 frames per second, but Pixel doesn't do that. Pixel's at 1080p right now. Let's move on to the pictures. Right off the bat, you would notice that S20 Ultra's lens has slightly wider field of view when you compare it with Pixel 4 XL or Huawei's P40 Pro. Colors look very nice on almost all these three cameras. Details look very nice on all these three cameras. The sharpness is on point. The highlights are perfect. Although again, like we saw in the videos, you would also notice that all these three cameras have their own way of looking at the pictures or actually producing their own color tones. Well, they all have their own characteristics. Ultra has slightly saturated and warm tones, P40 Pro has slightly red hue to almost all its images, and Google Pixel 4 XL sticks to the natural tones of the scenes. And I also noticed that P40 Pro slightly overexposes the pictures a little bit. Overall, outdoor colors look very nice on all these three cameras, and Pixel kind of loses the competition when you talk about the wide angle. S20 Ultra and Huawei's P40 Pro come bundled with the ultra-wide lens. Also, when you compare the ultra-wide lenses between S20 Ultra and the P40 Pro, you would notice that the ultra-wide lens on S20 Ultra has a much wider field of view when compared with the P40 Pro, because P40 Pro's ultra-wide lens is the cine lens or a different aspect ratio when compared to the S20 Ultra. Beside the wider field of view, I think S20 Ultra and the P40 Pro capture perfect detail and perfect sharpness through their ultra-wide lenses in daylight. Now see, S20 Ultra and Huawei's P40 Pro come with very large size sensors. So you see how these large sensors actually help these cameras by creating this natural bokeh behind your subject without summoning the portrait mode. Now this is an example how these large sensors are actually creating more problems than solving things. See here the picture on S20 Ultra, the tail of this airplane is completely blurred out because the large sensor actually focuses on the center part of the image so much that it actually creates a fringing on the outer side of the pictures. Well, don't think that P40 Pro's 50 megapixel sensor is free of fringing. This is another example where you can see the fringing is apparent. Yes, S20 Ultra has this problem a slightly more than when you compare it with the P40 Pro, but P40 Pro also has this problem, and Pixel has no problems at all in these kind of scenarios. Now, where S20 Ultra's problems end, P40 Pro's problems start, and that is the color gamut. You see, this hat is actually orange in color. The sharpness and detail is perfect, but the color is completely messed up. I noticed these issues in multiple pictures, so I thought let me try to bring in some generic items that you would have seen in your real life, so that you can understand what I'm trying to say here. You see, this red part of this fire hose is completely different color in the P40 Pro's image, but P40 Pro is slightly creating a different color palette altogether when it comes to these kind of colors. S20 Ultra continued with the saturation. P40 Pro could not handle this red and the orange tones for some reason. I don't know why, but I hope this gets fixed very soon, because this is sort of a thing that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let us talk about the HDR on the picture front now. Now, this is the indoor sample where the light was behind the window and the room was not artificially lit at all. It was completely dependent on the natural light. You see how P40 Pro has the best detail out of the three? It is balanced really well. When you summon the ultra-wide lenses, you would see how P40 Pro runs far ahead than the other two cameras and captures the maximum light and maximum detail, whereas S20 Ultra continues to remain dull in the foreground. It was a very common scenario with S20 Ultra. The moment you point this phone towards the sun or towards any harsh lighting, you would notice that it loses so much detail in the foreground, because it's focusing so much and trying to control the exposure in the image in the background that it actually sacrifices something in the foreground. This is a sample from the selfie camera of all these three phones. S20 Ultra continues to show the warmer tones, P40 Pro has slightly cooler tones, and Pixel 4 XL has the most balanced image out of the three because it handles the exposure on the face the best. Now, of course, they have these portrait modes in the selfies as well. I noticed one peculiar problem with the S20 Ultra. It just kept on refusing to blur the background in this particular angle. I tried multiple shots, but none of the shots came out with the blurred background. Whereas with Pixel and P40 Pro, it happened in the first shot. When I changed the angle, yes, actually S20 Ultra did blur the background. Now let us try to understand how the main camera handles the human subject. S20 Ultra continues with the warmer and the brighter tones, P40 Pro has slightly cooler tones, and Pixel 4 XL sticks to its natural tones. And when you summon the portrait mode on all these three cameras, you would notice that S20 Ultra and Pixel 4 XL actually use the telephoto lens to create the blurry background. All three images look great, but if you want me to nitpick, I can in these three images. You see how this slight corner or the edge of my glasses has actually been blurred and not been captured properly on P40 Pro and the Pixel 4 XL. Now, when we are at the main cameras, we cannot not talk about the new kings of the zoom world. Suddenly the zoom is back in fashion. Let's see how far they can actually see. Now we are at 0.5x, which is the ultra wide lens at the moment on P40 Pro and the S20 Ultra. Pixel is a 12 megapixel main sensor. Now at the moment, all three images are equal in terms of their focal length. Let us try to get closer to the subject. I'm trying to go as close as to that ship which is parked way far away from this particular place. We are at 5x zoom now. Let us get even closer to the subject. Pixel stops at 8x, whereas P40 Pro and S20 Ultra are at 10x zoom right now. This is at 30x. Now when you compare them side by side at 30x, I think P40 Pro is capturing a better detail or doing a better job. We are at 50x now. Here the P40 Pro actually stops, but S20 Ultra continues to go further and can go all the way to 100x, the space zoom. Okay, so we looked at the things which were very far away. Now let's try to look at things where we need to get really close to the subjects. I mean the macro mode. So I was trying to focus on this small tiny jar here. The natural bokeh appears on S20 Ultra and the P40 Pro, which is also present on Pixel 4 XL, but not as aggressive as the other two cameras. And I was surprised to see the sharpness in the foreground was slightly better on S20 Ultra when you compare it with the P40. And when you go really close to the subject, you would notice that all three cameras are doing a tremendous job. Although I like what P40 Pro has done here, even on the macro shot, it has created created this lovely bokeh around my subject. Now let us try to look at the low light photography. We are in a twilight zone right now. All three cameras behave very similar in this kind of scenarios. You talk about the colors, all three have very similar color tones in terms of saturation, but differentiate in overall color gamut. But here on, things change very drastically, and you would see how P40 actually comes forward as the leading night photography camera. Now this was an example how warm tones actually make S20 Ultra suffer in terms of image quality, because it became just too warm for my liking. I think the best image that has out of the three which has come out, or rather is very close to the natural scene, is from the P40 Pro here. Well, let's try to understand the noise levels in the pictures, and I'm happy to confirm that noise is being handled really well by S20 Ultra and P40 Pro both. Whereas Pixel is slightly blown out in terms of noise handling. By no means Pixel has bad image quality, it's just that the other cameras have become so good now that you start to find that narrow room for improvement that you would require in Google's Pixel line now. This red color issue that we noticed during the daylight pictures on P40 Pro is also available, or rather is present in the nighttime pictures as well. But boy, was I excited, or rather happy, to see the sharpness and detail on P40 Pro images. These pictures don't look aggressively sharp and rather have brilliant detail and brilliant color combination in such scenarios. Now let us try to understand the night mode on these three pictures. This is a perfect example to showcase that. You see, these three pictures are clicked without the night mode on. The top part of this tree is actually blurred completely on all these three images. So when you take these pictures with the night mode, you would see that Huawei P40 Pro's image is completely lit up and is brightened evenly across the frame. Whereas on S20 Ultra, there is this weird halo that was created around the subject. Yes, it improved the sharpness in the overall image, but created this halo around the subject. Whereas when you talk about the brighter shots during the night, P40 Pro takes the cake. But in some cases, it actually hampers P40 Pro's performance. Now, this is something that we all can learn from. P40 Pro's night mode is not something that you need to kick in by default. Their main sensor is capable of capturing image without even using the night mode with good brightness and good detail. You should keep the night mode reserved for very dark scenes. Yes, I would recommend using the night mode on S20 Ultra because it handles and captures the noise really well. See, this is an example how night mode actually worsens the thing for these cameras. You see, S20 Ultra has good amount of detail in the foreground and in the background. Even P40 Pro is looking very natural and has maximum detail in terms of picture quality. Now, when I use night mode on these three cameras, see how things worsen off. You see how everything became so dark for S20 Ultra and it just captured on the background of the image. And for P40 Pro, the color completely changed on this image. And when you talk about the low light selfies, again, Pixel shows that how it screws up the white balance and makes a warm lighting situation and converts it into a completely white light situation. P40 Pro captured the maximum sharpness on the image and skin tones look very nice and perfect here. And S20 Ultra somehow continues to struggle with their selfie game in low light situation. Let's move to the completely dark situation, all lights off on only one window open. So you see how P40 Pro is capturing so much detail, whereas you cannot see anything on S20 Ultra and Pixel 4 XL, but you will see so much on P40 Pro's image even without the night mode. And when you summon the night mode, yes, the S20 Ultra and Pixel 4 XL somehow catch up with the P40 Pro, but still P40 Pro has the maximum detail. For some reason, it changes the entire color science on it, but yet it has the more detail. I don't know if there is any usage for this particular scenario, but that's up to you guys. So I think it all boils down to the preferences. It depends what kind of pictures do you need from your smartphone camera. What do you need from your smartphone camera? Tell me in the comments below. Which of these do you like? I'm working on a P40 Pro review. Do subscribe to my channel if you want to watch that. Thank you for watching, guys. Cheers.